Hey everybody, it is Drac from DDO Players, and we are here with a special guest for a little chat. I am on the line here with Mr. Robert Adducci, who is the community manager for the Adventures League.
Hey, how's it going?
Thank you so much for taking some time out of your evening to sit down and talk some Adventure League and some D&D with us.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
All right, let's start off with the easy question. Why don't you start by introducing yourself to our audience and maybe exactly what you do with the Adventure League?
Sure, I'm Robert Adducci, and I'm the community manager for the D&D Adventures League, which means basically, I'm kind of the face of the league. I monitor all the Facebook and Google Plus and Twitter accounts and every other kind of place where we might be mentioned. I'm usually there, or one of our regional coordinators or one of the other admins are kind of checking it out and, just kind of always staying up to date with what people are talking about with the Adventures League.
And how did you get involved with the Adventures League and with Wizards of the Coast themselves as well?
In about, 2014, I think, Chris Tulak, who is then the organized play director at Wizards for D&D, put out a call for people that wanted to be involved with organized play. I answered that call, and then there was some other emails about some different positions, the content manager, the resource manager, and the community manager. So I jumped at the community manager, and thanks to some prior experience that I had, and some really great references from people in the industry, I scored the position.
Awesome. And what's your background history with Dungeons and Dragons? I'm assuming you were a longtime player?
Yeah, I'm a longtime player. I've played, long time for me, I guess. I played since I was like 15 years old or so. So, like about early 90s. I think 1990s, about when I started. I just played a lot of D&D, a lot of Vampire, a lot of Shadowrun, Rifts, all those sort of 90s games.
Right.
Took a break for a while. I played a little third edition, but then took a break for a while. And then when fourth edition came out with Dark Sun, I'm a huge Dark Sun geek. I started the Athos.org website, the Burnt World of Athos, which has become the official Dark Sun website in the late 90s. But then when fourth edition came out with Dark Sun, that pretty much pulled me back into it. I wrote some of the Ashes of Athos organized play campaign that Ball Bang Games did, and then that's, like I said, was pretty much what got me into this position.
Which that website is amazing, by the way. Just as
Thanks.
a side note, I
Thanks.
love that website. Yeah, I'm a big Dark Sun fan as well. So
Nice.
That is my go-to site for Dark Sun.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into the good stuff here. How about the Adventure League? Can you kind of explain what it is and tell us how it works?
Sure. The D&D Adventures League is the organized play program for Wizards of the Coast for D&D. So we're really aiming to follow the storylines that Wizards of the Coast puts out. So they put out a storyline, we create our own narrative, and currently we're in the Moonsea region, and we follow the themes of the main storyline, but kind of have our own storyline. So that if people don't play the hardcover adventure, they can still play the Adventures League stuff at stores and at conventions. But we just recently announced with the DM's Guild that you could play Adventures League anywhere, and so now it's not just stores and conventions; it's really home play, and anywhere you can play D&D.
Yeah, I was going to ask how exactly the DM's Guild has changed the Adventures League. So is that the major change in it? Is just the fact that you can play it anywhere now?
Yeah, so before, as I said, it was kind of limited to stores and conventions. And also we'd started with last season, we'd started allowing people to do it online as well, because our big thing was like public play. And so online counted as public as long as you were streaming it. So other people, the public could watch. But with the DM's Guild now, anybody can purchase the adventures that we put out, and they can play their own Adventures League games at home as well. And so that allows us to kind of broaden our horizons. We're not just focused on stores and conventions. We still are, those are still major pillars of our community, but we can now also focus a little bit more on the home games, just because there's so many more of those than stores and conventions.
So I know you always, if you play at a store, you have to report that. So if we do home games for the Adventure League content, do we have to report that to the Adventures League somehow?
No, so the reporting is purely for the stores for their what's called their WPN level, their Wizards Play Network level.
Okay.
And if they have, the more kind of players they get, individual players, that kind of bumps their level up, and so that sort of helps them with some of the things through the Wizards Play Network, which is primarily Magic focused. But when you play at home now, you don't need to do any reporting. The only thing you need to make sure you're doing is, if you're the DM, just run the game by the Adventures League Players Guide, and then the players just need to make sure they're logging all their rewards, so their gold, their experience, their downtime and renown on the log sheets, and that can be either digital or paper. It's up to the player. And as long as they're doing those things, then those characters can go to any other game, anywhere in the world, and play those characters.
Okay, and I know kind of a controversial topic here a little bit. When the DM's Guild was first announced, there was a little bit of, we'll say pushback from some of the community and some of the stores about including the Adventures League adventures for the DM's Guild and charging for that stuff now. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, it's, Wizards is kind of constantly changing. They're kind of constantly figuring out what works best for them, and they decided that they wanted to do this this DM's Guild, and that's actually, it's not like it's just a recent change. They've been working on it. Chris Lindsay, in particular, has been working on it for about 5 years to kind of get it so that people could submit, their own content. And they decided to, link that very closely with us. And so, having people purchase the adventures is going to cause a little bit of pushback from the community, because before they had been free. And so we're hoping that with this we'll do a couple of things. One, that all of the designers that submit content to us will now be paid exclusively through the DM's Guild after this season, and so it will encourage them to to give us more kind of push button content. So once they give it to us, hopefully it's it's been edited and it's been play tested, and hopefully it's in a better state than kind of it has been before, where we had to do a lot of editing sometimes, a lot of rewrites and stuff like that. So now that they're going to be paid directly for that, we're hoping that kind of pushes up the quality for us. And so hopefully people will start to see that, and it will make the couple dollars you have to spend to get the adventure worth it.
And I want to say they're like $2.99. Isn't that the price of them?
They vary. I think $2.99 is the 2-hour ones. $3.99 is 4 hours, and right now the $4.99 ones are the 8 hours, which is really, really inexpensive. I think when you start seeing the community mature a little bit there, I think you'll start seeing 4-hour ones by individual designers not associated with the Adventures League. They'll probably be more like $5, $6, and $7.
Okay, excellent. And how do you guys go about choosing the specific adventures that you run in the Adventures League?
So the Wizards of the Coast, they put out their story Bible for each storyline, and as part of Wizards, we get that, and we're able to create our own storyline based on their storyline. So it has all the same themes and everything, but we're currently in the Moonsea area, so we kind of create we decide which city we're going to in the Moonsea. We kind of look at all of the old, the second edition and third edition stuff for that region, for that city, and then we kind of craft a narrative from there. And we imagine, what does it look like 100 years later? How have things changed? What's the same? What's going to be familiar for old players, but what's going to be interesting for old players and new players? And then once we have that narrative set out, which is primarily the work of Travis Woodall, he's our content manager, but all the admins have a hand in it, but he's the primary pen there. So once we have that down, then we start kind of figuring out what we want the individual adventures to be. And usually we just kind of basically start throwing out a bunch of blurbs, short 2 or 3 sentence adventure details about what the adventure is about. And then either we or someone from Wizards, who previously was Chris Tulak, but it's currently Chris Lindsay, will kind of look at them and decide which ones we want to go with. And then from there, so we have, 16 or 18 adventures that we're going to use. From there, we'll kind of maybe flush them out a little bit, just give some bullet points, nothing major. And then we choose our designers, and that's Bill Benham is our resource manager. So he picks all the designers. And then we send them the blurb and our little details, and then they come back with us with a more detailed outline, and then we approve it or make any suggestions that we think need to be included or changes, and then they're off to the races to write the adventure.
And how I know it's kind of a hard question to answer here, but on the average, let's say, how long does it take to create an adventure like that?
I think our usual window for design is 6 weeks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But that's just the design. So you've got like about a 2-week period, I think, for outline, and 6 weeks for the design, and then there's a couple of weeks playtest that we used to do, and then a couple of weeks development. So it's a few months.
And the Curse of Strahd, of course, is coming out March 15th. So can you talk about how Curse of Strahd and Ravenloft is going to be brought into the Adventures League?
Sure. So Ravenloft it's not in Faerun. Our past 3 seasons have been all on Faerun, and now we want to keep some of the old storylines that we've used, some of the threads that we've used, and we want to be able to use those.
Right.
But how do we go to Ravenloft? So one of the things with Ravenloft is the mists. People walk into this bank of mist, and then they're in whatever world they're in, and then all of a sudden they're in this different world, this very gothic, dark world. And what people don't realize is that it's not only people that get pulled into the mists. Sometimes places get pulled into the mists.
Oh, wow!
And so we're taking the outskirts of Flan, which is where we started the Adventures League in the town called Flan, and we're taking the outskirts of that area, and it's getting kind of pulled into Ravenloft.
So I know in the older Ravenloft, once you were in, quote, Barovia, unquote, and the mist, you were stuck there until you could get out. Is that how the Adventures League is going to be? Once you're there, you're there?
Yeah, so we've got what's called a story award. So basically, when you get a story award, it sort of affects the way your character interacts with the story. If those certain details come up later. And for Ravenloft, or for the Curse of Strahd, our story award is I forget what it's called exactly, but basically you're stuck by the mists, and until you find a specific way or one of several ways to get out, you cannot leave the mist. You cannot leave Barovia. So that's one of the really, like you said, that's one of the old things that, one of the old themes of Ravenloft. And we wanted to stay true to that. And we're doing that by awarding this story award and having people stay in Ravenloft until they can leave.
I am so happy to hear that. I was hoping that was going to be the case.
Yeah.
Because that's just one of the great things that made Ravenloft a little different in the D&D world was
exactly.
The whole mist. And just a few weeks ago at Winter Fantasy, the new season kicked off. Can you talk about the new season and the adventures that are in this season?
Yeah, so Sean Merwin, he's been writing all of our introduction adventures. He's a very experienced designer and experienced organized play, DM, designer, admin. He's done it all. So he wrote our Suits of the Mists, Ravenloft introduction, or Curse of Strahd introduction, and it's 5 adventures. You play each of them. You don't have to play them in order or anything like that, but during them you kind of get transported into Ravenloft. So you start in Faerun, and strange things kind of are happening, and you kind of get sucked into Barovia.
I am so excited. I can't wait. And how many different stories are going to be involved in this season?
So we've got 14 stories. They range from 2 to 4 hours. Well, the first one, Sean's adventure, is, you can play them in 1 hour blocks, up to 5 hours. But there's 14 adventures, and different than previous adventures, this season is really tightly focused. So we highly, highly encourage people to play them in order if you can. It's not a requirement, but we really encourage it just because it's a much tighter storyline, and you'll get the most enjoyment out of it, if you play them all.
And I know in previous seasons there were DM rewards. Is that still the case, or has that changed as well?
Well, we're still doing DM rewards, but we've got a new program that we're hoping to implement this season. It's still a little bit up in the air, but we're pretty sure it's going to get the go. Let's see. I can say that we're going to be introducing more rewards for DMs. more of the things they've wanted. So people have wanted, more renown, because if you don't, right now the only way to get renown is if you play. So we wanted some DMs to be able to get renown especially if they DM a lot. So you'll be able to get renown for your characters. You'll be able to you'll get more experience than we've previously given. You'll get magic items, which previously you've not been able to. The only way to get magic items, other than occasionally the starting item from the D&D Encounter season, was to actually play. So we want to reward DMs that DM a lot and allow them to have magic items. We want to do things like, for the epic, if you DM the epic, you're going to get full experience for that, plus a magic item for whatever tier you DM. So we're really trying to kind of give more back to the DMs. If you recruit new DMs, you'll get a bunch of experience in different things. If you recruit new players, you'll get experience. So a lot of different ways to kind of get experience other than just running games as well.
Speaking of the epic that you talked about, I know those are usually ran at Winter Fantasy and like other conventions, like Gen Con and Origins.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of talk a little bit about the epic and tell us how those are different than the standard Adventure League adventures?
Yeah, so the epics are, epic adventures. They're huge adventures that we want people to play at with a large, more than just one table. We really want, our minimum right now is 10 tables, and we've dropped that down from when we kind of first started. It was like 15 tables, and you had to have had a premiere adventure before, which is, when one of our adventures starts. But for this season, because this season sort of wraps up a storyline that's been going from the beginning of the campaign. From the first season, it had effects in the second season and even in the third season. So now this fourth season, we're sort of wrapping that storyline up in the Reclamation of Flan, and that's a giant adventure where at Winter Fantasy we had 33 or 34 tables playing at one time. With 3 different tiers, so levels 1 to 4, levels 5 to 10, and then level 11 to 16 playing, all at the same time. As they complete quests, they affect the other groups. They give boons, kind of awards to other tables, depending on what they do. So it really does feel like, you're playing one giant game of D&D, even though it's, 30-something tables. So since this is sort of like a wrap-up of a storyline that's been going from the first season, we want a lot of people to play that. So for this season, we've reduced the requirements to 10 tables. So if you can run 10 tables, we'll give you the adventure, and you can run it, even if it's at a store. If you have a big store that you run 10 tables at, you could apply for it. And to apply for that, you could just go to dndadventuresleague.org, and we have there's an article there about applying for the epic. So if you have, like I said, a big store, if you have a small convention, if you can scrape together 10 tables, we'll give you the epic. The only kind of caveat is that we don't really want the epic kind of being in the same place like week after week. So, if one convention has it, we might not give it to the convention in the same city maybe till next month, or maybe even at the same state until the following month, or something like that. So we don't want to crowd people too much.
Kind of spread it around a little bit.
Yeah, we still want it to be a draw for conventions or stores that are running it.
And I know at Winter Fantasy, I kind of watched a little bit of the epic being run, and that was amazing to watch. All those tables, all those people, kind of all collectively trying to do one thing. It was amazing to watch. That was the first time I've actually seen one of the epics being ran. So
yeah, the designer for the epics that's been the designer primarily for the past couple of seasons is Will Doyle. He he's definitely getting better for every season, and this season is his crowning achievement. We had a projector with the map of Flan and the surrounding regions, and as their groups would move to different areas, we would move little banners on the map so they could, so other groups could see where everybody is. So it was really interesting to watch, like, nobody's in this area, and there's a mission that needs to be completed there, so groups would start going over there to complete the mission. It was really interesting.
Yeah, it was cool to watch, just to see people, that necessarily didn't really know each other before they sat down at the table. I'm sure some of them did, but, I would kind of tend to think that everybody that was sitting down at all those tables didn't know each other previously, and how everybody just banded together and worked together like that was amazing to watch.
Yeah, definitely.
I would have loved to actually played in it, but I just got to watch a little bit of it, and I enjoyed that. So I'm sure.
Like I said, we're having, we're putting the Epic out to more conventions than we ever had. And so I think right now we're scheduled for like 14 conventions this summer for the Epic. So check out dndadventuresleague.org. Look at our article about the Epics, and it has a list of all the places where the Epics are run. If you are part of a convention, or if you know of a convention that is large enough to support 10 tables and you want to run the Epic, have one of the organizers of the convention contact us and fill out that Premier or Epic application, and we review those occasionally. As long as you give us at least a month ahead of time heads up, we'll probably approve you.
And we just have a few more questions here. What over all of the seasons so far has been your favorite storyline?
Everyone, at first, the first one was my favorite. And then the second one, and then the third one.
Yeah.
And the reason is because we really have just been building on it. We started with the storyline in season 1. In season 2, there was a lot of stuff that was based on what happened in season 1. So we have, every time there's a premiere adventure, whatever convention gets that premiere adventure also gets, there's a link. If you go to dndadventuresleague.org/results, you can tell us what happened in your adventure. So it starts with the premiere adventure, and then even after the adventure is released to the public, other conventions can also report the results of what happens at individual tables. So DMs and players can tell us what happened. And so, does a certain character, so for example, in season 1, there was a character that seemed like she was sort of the leader. She ended up being the leader. She ended up being the survivor for the Black Fists. And so she, went into season 2. And then in that season, based on what happened, she ended up dying and was sort of the bad guy. And so all of these things happen based on what happens at individual tables, and really like an amalgam of what happens at the table. So, if 50%, more than 50% say she died, then she died. And so we kind of use that information going forward to inform our storylines. And so that's why I like every season in succession, because it's always adding on to this cool story that we've started at the beginning.
The final question I have for you here is, we have seen a rise in people playing D&D on Twitch here lately. So have you seen people running any of the Adventures League stuff on Twitch? Or do you guys, recommend people to do that? Or do you care if people run that stuff online?
Oh, we love it. I mean, that's fantastic. That's a huge thing that's been coming up, with Critical Role, with the D&D Adventures League. The D&D, just the D&D people. They put out they kind of have one campaign kind of going at a time, and so they're constantly on Twitch posting cool videos of people that work at Wizards of the Coast playing D&D. So all of that is definitely part of the new kind of paradigm of D&D, and that's part of the reason I would imagine that Wizards of the Coast decided to go with the DMs Guild, because there's just so much of that, people just watching other people play. So before, one of the ways that we would allow people to get the adventures when they were free was by saying that they stream live on Twitch. We still kind of have that. In addition, we have the online region. So D&D Adventures League is kind of made up of regions around the world. But we also decided that in addition to those physical, geographical regions, we are also going to have an online region. And so David Russell is our online regional coordinator, and he recently coordinated what was called AloCon, which is Adventures League Online Convention. And that was in January, and he had a premiere adventure for them. And, it was just people from all over the world playing D&D for a whole weekend online. A lot of those games were streamed. And so, we're really trying to embrace that online potential, using Fantasy Grounds or whatever other virtual tabletop you want to use.
Okay, and I know you mentioned the website a couple times, but what is the official website for the Adventures League for any questions that we might have?
Yeah, so our website is D&D. It's just DND, adventuresleague.org. You can also find us on Twitter, where you can find us at DND_ADV League. We're also on Google+. If you just search for the Adventures League. In addition to those places, we're on Facebook. That's kind of primarily where we interact with people. If you just, again, search for D&D Adventures League, you'll find us. In addition, there's like I said, talk about the regions. a few minutes ago, and each region has a Facebook page and a Google Plus page. So if you live in California, you can join our Far West region, and you can see where people are, what people are talking about in that region. So you can stay abreast of cons and stuff like that in the region. In addition, there's sometimes, smaller locations. So if the Far West, that's a pretty big area of the United States. So they have it broken down. It's like Northern California and Southern California. Sometimes there's even individual city Adventurers League pages. So there's a lot of places where you can get in touch with us from the admins. In the main group, you can talk to us, individual 6 admins, or you can get drilled down to your local coordinator in the local San Diego page or whatever.
All right, and we look forward to see what's coming up with the Adventures League. And once again, we thank you for taking a little time out of your evening here to chat about Adventures League and Curse of Strahd and D&D with us.
All right, thanks, Drac. It's been my pleasure.